Hey, good evening, Galion. This is Mayor Tom O'Leary. Thank you for joining us on another Monday night Facebook Live. I, like everyone else, have had about enough of all this rain, and yet we have some more tonight. So it puts a dent or a hamper into just about all of our service activities, the parks, the regular maintenance of sewers. It slowed our paving contractor down. So while everyone in their own personal and their own work life probably been impacted by the poor weather, us, the people at City Hall, are not in any way immune from that, and we've been working hard, struggling to try to keep things ahead of schedule, and particularly in the parks. Before I get started talking about city issues, I want to do something I've not done in the past 2 or 3 years. I want to recognize a citizen who was a classmate of mine who passed over the last several weeks. Craig Harmon, who I had the pleasure to go to Washington, D.C. with to memorialize the Lincoln birthday earlier this year, passed in the last couple of weeks. And he was one of those individuals who, in a lot of ways in my life, provided a lot of results for me, and it's sad to see him go. And I know there are a lot of people, old timers, so to speak, that tune into this, and I wanted to recognize Craig's passing. He did an awful lot, I think, not just for the Galion area, but generally in terms of developing a good historical record of what the Lincoln Highway meant to America, and specifically what it meant to Galion. And so just about everybody who came in contact rather with Craig has a Craig Harmon story, and so I just wanted to recognize Craig tonight and not let his passing go unmentioned. And a little self-indulgent, but for those of us who knew him, I'm sure they would all agree that a moment or two to mention his contribution to Galion and the value that his life had. So with that said, let's move on to just a couple of other items. As I mentioned, the weather is handicapping things, but I would have to say that we're looking forward to the pickle run at the end of next week. We won't be on next Monday, but I want to recognize it now. Fireworks are at dusk on the 6th. I don't know, it's not maybe a national tradition, but it's going to become our tradition since the pickle run was reborn, that they've scheduled that in the first weekend in July. So I'm not quite what advice to give you on the 4th of July. I would say the graders are home, and I doubt it. I don't want to tease that we'll have some pirate fireworks people there, but we'll try to work on something to recognize the 4th on the 4th. But pickle run Friday evening, all day Saturday, and it's each year it's grown and been quite successful, and so we know that will happen again this year as weather permits. So those two items are going on. As I mentioned, our paving contractor is wrapping up. There's a few streets that have been milled off that haven't been resurfaced yet, but that'll be wrapping up, and we'll step back at when that's completed and take a look at where we are with resources. My guess is that that was around $270,000 worth of paving, and my guess is that we'll do another $75,000 to $100,000 in one form or fashion between now and the end of the fall and the paving season. I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago that what I call the wood streets, I'm not sure, they probably call themselves pine or ash or oak, but that whole subdivision had which has little traffic, but the roads have been I think long overdue and being resurfaced. One of the neighbors there pointed out that she had the original assessment from when she moved in nearly 60 years ago when the neighborhood was first built. So like I say, once every 60 years or whenever it needs it, that's our paving policy. So the other projects are moving along. There was on the Portland Way North winding project. We're starting to get a better handle on exactly what's going to be involved in terms of cost and really the scope of the project. And although there's been some reductions in the estimated budget, it's I don't believe that we're done hammering away at that to build as economically but as safely and with as great a utility as possible, that widening. Procured, I believe that we purchased the poles or put in a purchase order for the poles for the traffic signal. So I like everyone else. We're looking forward to that and believe that it will be late fall when that's completed. But that will be the beginning of what will be a couple years of improvements on 598, which I'm strongly believe will really open up that area and set the table for future development out there. You know, a couple weeks ago, a questioner had used the verb and suggested that we're slamming things in the Portland way. I mean, we can have a friendly debate, disagreement over that, but I do believe that once the roads widen, that all the other ingredients for additional investment will happen out there. And honestly, I'm looking forward to it, and I hope and believe that most people in town see that as a top infrastructure improvement. Been in some initial conversations with Bucyrus about working on what is known as Issue 1. There's an annual allocation of your tax money that comes to the local governments, really a bond issue that the bonds are serviced at a state level through largely state gas tax. But in any case, we're looking at letting Bucyrus double up perhaps this year, and then when our paving project is ready to go in 21, then we'll get a larger allocation and close any kind of gap that we have on that project. So what we're talking about is 20 and 21, but in infrastructure planning, that's where we're at. We're building projects that were approved several years ago and looking at the design and planning of projects that we'll see a couple years from now. So those items I think are a couple, three things to start with, and again tomorrow, really not much of a council agenda, but with the creation of the Port Authority, we're going to need to get some members finally appointed. We'll be moving ahead on that. Anything, Matt?
Yeah, first question tonight comes from Ashley. Mm-hmm. She asks, has the city sprayed for mosquitoes this year?
I don't think we've sprayed yet. I think there's a schedule established, and although that's a little bit controversial, we at City Hall are on the side of spraying versus waiting. I think some of the public health people are more of the opinion to wait till you have some problems with mosquitoes, Lyme disease, or other things that are cause greater concern than just the mosquitoes. But we're on the mosquito spraying, and certainly be out there in advance of the pickle run where there's a lot of usage, and it's in there in a kind of a wet spot in town. So, yeah, Ashley, we haven't done it yet, but it will be upcoming. And as in the past, we've announced that through the media and then made it public. Published it, I guess, through our social media. So that's our plan this year as well. Well, anyways, we're just going to go ahead and wrap things up here in a moment. I wanted to, in addition to reminding our audience what is going to go on in the park on the 5th and 6th with the pickle run, the playground that will soon, the construction will soon be quite an item in the park with a lot of excitement and anticipation for completion. We're going to hold off that certainly until pickle run's over, and then find a way to incorporate this new playground area into future festivals or things that happen in the park. Really within a week or two from some new, what I think will be fun and pace-changing kind of water features out at the Splash Park. So this is really a parks time of year, and we're trying to meet those needs and expectations. I'll finish by one last thing. I want to thank everyone who has been renting our shelters. 2 or 3 years ago, we had basically primitive shelters that hadn't been modified or touched much in 30, 40 years. And we began to invest in those with the pavilion at adding to and making sure that the East Park cabin continued to be available and frequently rented. But since then, we've added the pavilion at the depot, and is renting quite regularly. And today in the office, there seemed to be quite a bit of interest in checking out the new Amon's enclosed pavilion. So we put money into the existing shelters, the more primitive shelters, and I think more importantly, we now have 3 indoor enclosed pavilion or rental areas. And if you pour over the city budget like I do, you would notice that we're really generating kind of all-time highs there, and we're really just halfway through the year. So it's certainly the cost of the investment won't be recouped in rental in any one year, but over a period of years, I think the taxpayers will get use and get their money out of those facilities. So, having said all that, we'll find a way technically to put some images with this audio. And like I started to say a minute ago, it's a good thing we don't charge you to watch this thing. So, thanks a lot and for your patience, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Good night.